Welcome to Journey Within with myself, Nigel Paul Miller. Today I'm joined by Isabella Greene. Isabella is a metaphysical specialist, a spiritual healer. Welcome to the show, Isabella. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Thank you, Nigel. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely fantastic. Now, I'm really looking forward to this, Isabella. So, tell listeners a little bit about yourself, kind of with regards to your current situation at the moment. How did you come to be kind of the spiritual teacher that you are now? Give us a little bit of a background.
I like metaphysical specialists. That kind of feels good. It kind of happened. It's been a long journey here. I had my abilities since childhood, but then I went into American dream, which I call American coma, really, for 20 years, and took a little bit of a awakening or reawakening to go through once again, to start tapping into my abilities once again. And I literally had no idea how far I was going to go with this. And at this point, I'm just a vessel for the higher powers, I guess, to move through me. And I'm working diligently on my mission because I want to be done after this lifetime. This is the last time on earth. Forget about
it. So, I mean, just for people listening, so kind of tell us a little bit about your background in regards, you were working in financial services back in 2010. And basically you kind of had a spiritual awakening where you kind of realized that life was no longer fulfilling and satisfying for you. And you wanted to kind of seek a deeper purpose and, serve the world on a deeper level. So talk us through the process of that kind of awakening. What exactly kind of was going through your mind when you decided to kind of make that change in your life?
Well, same as for most people, it was not easy for me to let go of the comfort or safety of having a really good job with good pay and great benefits. And I was traveling the world, and the job was really decent, but it was not feeding my soul. I got to the point where traveling got tiring and I was just not fulfilled anymore. So but I wasn't letting go still. And most people don't, because, it's just that cushion that you hold on to no matter what. But then the job let go of me. I was literally speaking that out into the universe. I was saying, well, when they lay me off, I gonna just be free, but people telling me, hey, you realize that you're asking to get laid off. I did not think much of it, but literally 3 months later, once I started saying that, it came true, and they gave me a wonderful severance package, like a year of pay without having to go to an office. That gave me some time to think about things.
Wow, that's nice. Very nice.
The main idea was that I realized that I was not born to do this, that there was something bigger for me or something different for me to do, and I had no idea what it was. And so slowly I started searching, and slowly I started finding things, and I started from coaching, because the pursuit of happiness was my main question for myself always. And so for others, I started offering my ideas, what I think about it. And then people started telling me that when I move my hands through the air, they can feel things. And that was surprising to me. And this is how energy work came to be. And then I just was studying a lot and learning a lot of stuff and taking a lot of courses. And then I started meditation. When I came across the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, I started meditating at night at 3:30 in the morning. I did that. After I did that for 5 years, all kinds of abilities came online. And literally, I very often don't even know how to explain what it is that I'm able to do now. But my practice developed into what it is right now. International, with people who are reaching out to me for assistance with their awakening process or understanding the awakening process and all kinds of stuff. So I do all kinds of stuff nowadays. Yeah. And there were many steps to this. There were trips to the desert. There was this person in a bar, a sober person in an empty bar, who tapped me on the forehead and said, "This is what you're here to do." And
wow,
it was like mind blowing for me. That moved me towards seeking and becoming a coach. So there were many steps and synchronicities that got me here. So
it's incredible though, isn't it? Like how stuff like that can happen. Just stuff can just manifest out of nowhere that, you know, is totally in alignment with where you want to go, but a lot of times you can't explain it logically. Like you said, you met someone at a bar, some sober person at a bar who just happened to be there that time and who told you what you were supposed to be doing here. I mean,
I was coming, it was a time I was coming out of, so there was about the end of that year 2010 already, and I still did not figure out what it is that I'm here to do. So I was started to run out of that severance package and started to get very nervous, you know, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And I was coming out of heavy partying, of years of heavy partying, and was doing yoga and eating holistically by then and everything. And so after yoga class, at some point I was walking by, I just had a feeling to walk back home instead of taking the subway in New York City. And as I started walking, I had that really strong feeling to stop at that bar. And I did not drink by then. So I just had a wild idea, I'll go ahead and have some tea there. And that made no sense whatsoever, but I followed. And when I came in, the bar was completely empty because it was like daytime. And it was just that one guy sitting there with a glass of water. And he looked like he was completely out of it, you know. And so I sat down. He was staring into his glass of water. And I sat down, and I ordered tea, and they didn't have tea, so I ordered water. And I'm sitting there going, "What am I doing?" And then he looked up at me and he said, "What do you do?" And I started telling him about my corporate occupation. And he was like, "No, not that. What do you do for people?" And I got annoyed. I was like, "Who are you? Why are you talking to me? You know, it's New York City. You don't talk to strangers in New York City." Like, why are you asking me all these questions? Like, I got really angry. And he said, "Well, because I can see something." And he said, I said, "I don't know." He said, "Think about it." So I started thinking about it, and I realized that I've always been kind of like an inspiration to people. People always came to me for emotional support. I always could comfort people. I was just doing that my whole life. And then also I was always surrounded by creative type of people, musicians and artists. And when I would come into their lives, their performances would bloom. And so I was kind of like a starter, or that starting like a platform. Yeah. For them to jump and get bigger. And so I told him that, and he said, "That's what you're here to do." And then he leaned across the bar, tapped me on the forehead, and it felt like fireworks went off. And I just picked up my yoga mat and looked at him. I walked out and went home and I couldn't sleep for that night. And I started looking online for people who help people, or people who inspire people. And I found a job that's called life coach. And 2 weeks later, I was in California to get certified, take a course, and that all started developing from there. That's it.
Wow, what a story. Like, that's incredible. So he literally, like, I mean, it's just amazing that you walked into the bar and you thought he was drunk. And like, I mean, that's just the funniest thing ever. But what fascinates me about that is the fact that he tapped you on the head and you were just like, whoa. It's like you had that kind of supernova of consciousness just explode in your mind. And you were just like, oh my God, like, you know, that's incredible. What an amazing story.
later I knew, because as I was passing him, he gave me his card. Later I knew that it said quantum healing, and to me, I had no idea whatsoever at that point what quantum healing was. I was walking around asking people, what's quantum healing? They're like, well, what kind, what? It was just like complete disconnect there. But yeah, I guess he had the gift, and so he did that. It was a bit of an activation, but it took a while for me to get where I'm at right now. Well, so it was 10 years ago. Wow.
That's incredible. And I mean, when you kind of look back now at that point in time, do you think you could have ever imagined your life turning out the way it has before you met that guy?
God, no. No. I thought I was gonna be in New York City for the rest of my life. I thought I was gonna be an old girl in a bar, like totally loving it. No, there's no way.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it? So tell us a little bit then about kind of your practice then, with regards to kind of the kind of issues that you help people solve. Go into a little bit about what you've done for your, for people that you've come into contact with. You said a lot of times you're a catalyst in people's lives, regards to their success and stuff like that. So can you give a couple of examples where you have transformed somebody's life as a result of either working with them or just associating with them?
Just about every person.
Wow.
humbly I humbly say, well, no. People reach out to me with all kinds, with a really wide range of requests. I worked for a while with people who had physical conditions. I've saved a couple lives, took a few people out of hospitals, out of deathbed. As a matter of fact, one guy was dead, pronounced dead. And then he woke up, his wife called and she said, can you walk him, out of his body? And there was a time when I was doing that, and he woke up and was alive for another number of years afterwards. As a matter of fact, he asked for 5 years. He asked me to make a contract for him for 5 years, and he stayed alive exactly 5 years. That was very trippy. Wow. And then nowadays, that's the past. Nowadays, I get people who want to know about their cosmic heritage, who want to know about the karmic journey, their parallel realities of past lives, what we call past lives or parallel realities, where their soul is operating outside of this density, dimensional connections, DNA connection into other galaxies. And I do activations of that kind of DNA in people, so to bring their abilities back online. I now started doing channeling, where I channel various ET races that work with us, that we're connected with. I also sometimes channel like saint dimension, but mostly I work with the extraterrestrial realm. So that tells people about themselves. They come back to me after about a year usually and tell me that their life completely changed after our session, our experience. Very often pains go away, but it's just a side effect of this work, of the consciousness work. I teach them how to figure out how they are creating their reality from the subconscious space, and teach them how to start creating it in the conscious space. So I also do entity work, removal of spirits that like very much to work in human forms. So that elevates your frequency and helps you to basically have access to your own resources. But it all comes with like chakra alignment and the energy field clearing and all of the blah 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 stuff that everyone else does. But nowadays a lot of people do that. Yeah, so I do all that plus super advanced. And I actually just recorded and I'm going to release it within the next couple of days. I just recorded a video about the most advanced session I had so far. And that is where I got a download in the channel on about the Orion experiment, where they seeded the planet in the galaxy, and I got the number of the galaxy because the galaxy does not have a neighbor in the Milky Way, and the whole story of that race, what happened to them, and how they partially incarnated into human realm. So that was literally the most advanced session I've experienced myself. But luckily the clients that are coming in now, they are on the level of consciousness that I can understand that kind of stuff. And we're talking multidimensional experience of a human outside of immediate physical experience.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm super grateful when I get clients like that, the ones who are aware and tapped in enough to understand.
So essentially you're attracting in clients who already have an awareness of these concepts and of these kind of modalities that you're working with, as opposed to just somebody coming in off the street who doesn't really have any idea about, you know, spirituality.
Yeah, most of the time, and I'm grateful for that. Most of the I work a lot with healers, with the ones who already have their practices and already are super tapped in and aware, and then just say, oh, I feel like I can't reach my next level, and I'm not sitting there going, here's your next level. I just do my process, and it always works for them. I call myself an upgrade station. So for those who are awake and aware of this reality that I'm talking about, it's a very rich and generous exchange, both for me and for the client. But there are the ones who come off the street and say, oh, what? But in that case, the energies that come in, like everything, I just demystify stuff. I talk to them in the language that they can understand.
So how would you do that then if somebody came in and like, you obviously wouldn't go into the advanced kind of concepts about things. You would just kind of explain it to them in layman terms in kind of a way that they would get it from their vantage point, as opposed to giving them, you know, all these different kind of concepts and stuff. Because obviously a lot of people, you know, aren't aware of those types of things. And, you know, if they hear someone talking about stuff like that, they might go, hey, what the hell is this? Like, you know,
right.
So you have to be able to, you know, have sensory acuity, you know, with regards to the people that you're dealing with. So
I interview every client before I take them. I spend an hour with them on the call, finding out what it is that they're interested in, what their comfort zone is, and I literally customize every session. So I definitely am not going to blow the mind of someone who is just starting to open their eyes. And the session that I already have on my YouTube channel, the Arcturian collective came in for that person who she had no idea that she had any connection to any cosmic heritage, but it turned out she has. And they were so gentle with her. They just literally like spoon fed her in the channel part and about simple things. So she came out of the session going, wow, I learned so much incredible information, but it was very comfortable. The environment of the session is very soothing. A lot of people tell me they never experienced the kind of love and acceptance as they experienced during my session. So it's very comfortable, very relaxed environment. And also in that previous session, we talked about basic stuff. She wanted to know about her patterns, about her addiction. Well, she thought she couldn't even, about her feeling bad about what other people do. And so what God explained there is this is an addiction to guilt. And you can listen to that, or anyone who wants to can listen to that on my YouTube channel. I have that posted already. So the sessions really fluctuate depending on what kind of client comes in.
So say if you had someone that came in and wanted to deal with the issue of maybe they felt that they were being held back in their life, they weren't actualizing their full potential.
Yeah, I hear that every time.
Or that, so somebody who's just about there and they know they're there, but they just need that little push. You know, they have that ambition, they have their vision, they have their flow, they have their energy, but there's just one, you know, maybe there's just like a tiny little bit of self-doubt that they still have, and undeservingness that they still have.
There's a lot to that, because there is childhood conditioning, there is always like the energetic, there's the habitual behavior, there is the state of mind that's supporting that. It all comes together. And then there are usually entities as well involved. So the person is not reaching their own resources, and then the lack of understanding of who they are, what they're here to do. So we will just cover that entire thing and explain to them what's running their show and like why they're feeling that way and what's in the way. We'll clear all that. And I offer exercises as in how to move past these programs, because there's, for majority of people who are unawakened, it's a false self, the program that's running the show. And I actually have a very simple exercise that shows the difference between the false self and the real self. And so then once they recognize, very often people are so remote from what their real self is. They know what's bothering them or what's in their way, but they don't really know what it is that they are. So the sessions are to teach them and expand their knowledge and understanding of who they really are, plus all the clearing of and bringing awareness to the patterns that they're running.
Yeah. When you find, like, can you kind of describe the transformation of someone who might go into you and, you know, they might be feeling a little bit disempowered, but then you do some work with them and then they feel like a new person. Like you can see their energy is different. You can see that they're standing in their true power and they know who they are. Like, can you describe what it's like, you know, kind of the contrast between that kind of growth of, you know, awareness and self-consciousness?
That's kind of all of the testimonials that I get are about that. Like, oh, I feel like such a different person now. I feel like I know what I'm doing here. I feel connected to my own self. So that's pretty much every session for people who are actually wanting that. I'm not really sure how to describe their condition or like how they went through that transformation, because that for me is going on the background. I do the work that I do, and then a little while later they write to me, and it's just standard in my practice. They write to me and say, wow, my life changed so much. I just got yesterday I get them every day literally, but yesterday, because I'm very busy, my practice is really busy, but yesterday I got a message, which is standard message. Oh, my life changed so much after the session was a year ago. I want to come in and now understand more, because very often it's like too much information, kind of people are not quite ready. But as that transformation takes place, they start observing and understanding what actually took place and assimilate that and integrate that, and then they come back and they ask for more because they're ready to move forward even from that point on. So that's just standard.
And I like just talking to you now, like I can hear how natural it is for you to do this work. I can see this is nothing to you. This is just like, you just kind of, you know, in a sense of, you know, your ability to transform people's lives. I can see that, you know, it's something that you have mastered, essentially.
I apparently, I just had a couple of friends visit from New York City, and they looked at my human design, which I try to stay away from any kind of charts and stuff, because I'm creating my own reality. Exactly. I don't want to be influenced by whatever, but yeah, a lot of stuff is accurate. And so they told me that in my human design, I don't understand human design very well, but there are like different centers in your structure that allow you to have certain abilities. Apparently I have one center that's completely open that allows me to transform into any person that I'm focused on. It's a real inconvenience in my personal life.
You mean energetically now? You're talking about matching or mirroring someone energetically?
Energetically, in every possible way. This is why I can read their energy stream, because when I'm with the client, I completely merge with the client remotely in a non-physical space, and I know everything about them. I know what they feel. I know what's in their way. I know what their karmic journey was. I literally get the whole picture, because that center is open in me. And so I just literally got that explanation last week. I had no idea how I can do this or why. But I literally merge is when we start, we go through the process of merging energetically. And then I just have, it's like I am talking about myself when I do that kind of work. And then I have to come back and remind myself, here I am, I'm not that person.
That's amazing. So yeah, because I mean that essentially means that you're integrating into the person's energy and you're able to kind of see them through their own eyes, essentially, which obviously gives you a much more insightful vantage point.
Kind of from their higher self eyes,
Wow.
because it's a picture from above, so to speak, although it's all here, but it's a picture of the bigger picture. Let's just say. But I do experience, like, if they're anxious, I feel anxious. If they are, I know what they feel. So I allow myself to get into that state when I do the work, so that I can, like, I literally get the person the best in the best possible manner. Plus I download their what's called Akashic records. I know the entire thing. I can read their DNA, I can read their state of being, and then I recover and I tell them about it. So
wow, that's incredible. Wow.
Thank you.
Now,
I know it's honestly, I had no idea. I literally talking about it is weird for me.
Yeah,
but I do this every day anyway.
It's incredible, isn't it? Like, and yeah, and I mean, I wanted to ask you about you were talking before about Joe Dispenza. He taught you a meditation technique that opened the door to everything else. What meditation technique was that?
Well, Dr. Dispenza was starting in 2010 and was still learning or teaching stuff to kind of, he has the teaching from that time, changing the habit of being yourself. Because he was teaching how to, like, the different personality creates a different personal reality, which is absolutely accurate. So my personal reality was really screwed at that time, right? I was a partier. I was sick in every part of my body. I was miserable. I was angry. I was an awful person. And I was like, in my soul was in such contrast with what I was doing in my life that it felt really awful. And so I started doing Dr. Joe's process and his meditations first to clear the emotional stuff out. And then we kind of grew in parallel, because a few years later, in 2014, he started teaching nighttime meditations, how to activate the pineal gland. And people were having incredible mystical experiences during these meditations. And so he said, oh, do this practice for 2 weeks. I went to one of his workshops and learned that technique. And then he said, do this for 2 weeks and see what happens. Later, I figured out that that's the most advanced yogic practice. It's called Cobra breath that he's teaching.
Wow.
And the yogis say don't do that unless you're ready, but we were just doing it anyway. So instead of 2 weeks, I did it for 5 years every single night. And then now I do this 3-4 times a week, because now it's like I no longer have to be shaking the bars in my cage. I'm out of my cage. So I can tune in and tap in without doing the meditative practice. But I like it because it gives me energy. Getting up at night to meditate gives you energy, more energy during the day, gives you access, gives you fine-tuning of your abilities, and just keeps me in shape. It's kind of like going to the gym now.
Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. So it's kind of like DMT breathing then, is it?
It's exactly DMT breathing. Yeah.
DMT breathing, yeah.
It's exactly that, because what happens is through that practice, you stimulate the production of DMT. You do this in the middle of the night when in complete darkness. And when all of your chemicals are ready. This is why people experience dreams and also are able to move through dimensional space in dream time, But here you take it to the next level. You're more conscious. It's not you being blown around by the wind in your dream space, unless you're a lucid dreamer that you can control your dreams. But when you're doing this kind of meditation, you learn how to operate your non-physical form in parallel realities, and then you can bring that back here into the physical, and always have that skill.
Wow, that's amazing. So you can basically connect with yourself that exists in a different timeline.
Yeah.
And you can garner information from them and bring it back and utilize it your own.
I developed what I call a multidimensional brain. And if you watch the movie Lucy, brain capacity, so they kind of, in that movie, Lucy, with whatever, Lucy, look it up. They talk about developing abilities, expanding abilities of the human brain. And so a lot of the abilities that they kind of casually like show in that movie, like it's fiction, that these are actual real abilities that you develop when your brain develops. And so I developed multidimensional brain. I call it multidimensional brain because I don't know what else to call it, but I'm aware of other aspects of myself living not only in parallel human realities, but also in parallel off-world realities, let's just say the non-human expressions, all the way into the void where there is nothing.
It's incredible that you speak about this, because like quantum computing, for example, that's supposed to be operating on a similar thing, whereby it's, tapping into essentially a parallel universe. Yeah. And it's utilizing the computational ability of a CPU in an alternate reality, which is, it basically runs off the many worlds theory, or the multi-universe theory.
Right.
And essentially what you're talking about is the same thing. And it's funny because I heard first about this concept about 5 years ago from a guy in Australia called Peter Smith, quantum consciousness, and probably similar to you. And he talked about how he could jump forward into the future, into timelines that, certain decisions that he'd made in his life. Like he'd decide, okay, does he want to start this business or does he not want to start this business? So he could go forward in time to him who had started the business and to him who had not started the business, and he could get advice and bring it back to the present and then utilize it. Which when I heard it, I was like, what the hell is that? I just thought that just sounds like some Star Trek like kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean? But so many people I've spoken to have the ability to do that.
But it all exists. It all exists right now. A part of my session is a process where I assist the person interact with the timelines or the aspects of themselves from this life, earlier in life. So we correct the past, or we heal the past, or we clear the past to assist the present, and then I bring in the future essence, and they all experience it. Because then in altered state, I put my clients into like a trance-like state, into an altered state. And so all of these like human stuff, oh, that's not possible, all that is not there. So they're literally experienced, and they are able to experience the future essence and feel what it is, like literally connect. And so I do that to show them that potential, which is just the highest possible, or the highest potential available to them, and introduce it to them so that they can pull themselves onto that timeline going forward. Yeah, that's a part of my process.
It's incredible. And I mean, as far as kind of jumping through those different possibilities, what's that like for you from your consciousness perspective? Like, do you just kind of see streams of like mirrors that you can just kind of jump to, or is it like a filing system? Because I've heard people describe, their kind of visualizations in a different way. When they do DNA work, they can, visualize down on a cellular level. What does that look like when you are actually doing that for someone, to you?
Oh, for someone, when I do this for someone, I literally see like a chart, like let's say a line that has different ages on it. So 2 years old, 6 years old, 10 years old, 9 years old, 15 years old.
Is that the Akashic Records? Is that the Akashic Records?
I don't really know. I don't think so. It's the past. Like the person is, let's say, 30 years old, right? And when I go into that space, I can see the flow of their life as a time, so from 0 to their present moment. And I can also see the fluctuation of darkness like where their problems began, where their conditioning darkened or sickened, where they experience darker years versus lighter years, the fragmentation of the timeline and the fragmentation of their soul. And so to me, it looks like literally like a geometric chart, you know, like a line and like, but it's a time, because what I see is the age groups when that happened. It's really weird. I can't explain that. It's just like, that's the way I see it, you know. For others, for myself, it's telepathic, you know. I just tune into something, or I just have a telepathic interaction with that aspect, and everything exists. All these aspects, the imaginary aspects, it all exists on a different timeline right next to you, like right in parallel here. So if you have that ability, you can just go right through that membrane that contains our physical reality and bring that information back. That's how I do that for my own self.
And you would say that the cause of you to kind of discovering all your kind of extrasensory abilities was from doing that DMT meditation?
For sure.
Over and over again. And you just...
No, for sure. Also like my sessions. So it literally would be that, oh, when I first started doing the meditations, I would just hang in space. Then I started being able to transport myself to a different destination. And I started exploring various non-human locations, like off-world locations. And I started asking for specific locations to explore. Then I started asking to interact with specific types of beings, because prior to that, it was just like what happens spontaneously, same like in dreams when you don't have much control of that. And now and then it all arrived into the non-space, like the void space, you know. So you kind of go through steps of learning how to navigate yourself. I can drop down and get an answer to whatever question I'm curious about. I can, if I feel like hanging out with any specific at any specific location, or double checking the information that came in through the session, I can do that. Or I can just get out of the body and just go into the non-existent space, the void. And then in parallel, the sessions would bring information too, you know. So as I'm in altered state during sessions and I merge with that person, the client who came in, that also gave me downloads of information that's coming through them. So that expanded my, you know, that skill as well. So I've been learning a lot through the sessions and also through my own meditations.
So it's almost like when you merge with these people and you experience these new possibilities and new experiences, it's almost like you're expanding your own consciousness as well.
For sure. Yeah, I'm definitely learning every day. I'm learning through the sessions. I'm finding out about new types of locations, new type of beings, new type of spirits. It like the otherworldly aspect that comes in through the sessions is blowing my own mind. Like that video, if you went to check it out, it's gonna be up. I actually already have it. I'm not sure if I want to release it today or whatever, but it's similar to the work of Dolores Cannon. Are you familiar with Dolores Cannon?
I've heard of her, yeah.
Dolores Cannon wrote like 40 books on non-human consciousness that she was just downloading through her clients who were under hypnosis. The clients would talk about other worlds, about other beings, about other realities, and she just was taking notes of that and putting that into book format. So I feel that my work, although it's a different modality, but in a way it's similar, because I'm learning incredible amount of wild information through these sessions too, while also assisting people. So, you know, it's a win-win right there.
Yeah, I mean, because it's amazing kind of the past few years, there's so many people that are kind of coming out that have those abilities, that are talking about the same things. And you know, when I first heard the concepts, I was just like, that just sounds ridiculous to me. But the more people I hear and the more people that like that I speak to that have these abilities. Like there's a girl from Ireland who I met there probably about 6 or 7 months ago, and she was the same as you. She had the ability. She could astral project. She could go anywhere on the planet. She could she could just do remote viewing. She could like it was, and I was listening to the story she was telling me, and I was just like, oh, what? And it just sounded crazy to me. You know, but the fact that there's so many people now coming forward and, you know, using social media and, you know, talking on shows like this and stuff and coming forward about their abilities. I mean, it's just an absolutely fascinating time.
We are just returning to our natural abilities. You know, humans are a living library. There is DNA from infinite amount of locations or multiple galaxies that are stored in human DNA, and DNA has consciousness, and that consciousness you can access. And so when you access that consciousness, that we call that DNA activation. That DNA starts activating, it starts emanating. That consciousness takes your brain a while to get there, but once the brain like notices these things, then we'll lay new pathways in the brain, and then we all of a sudden have these abilities that we never knew that we could have. So that's what's happening now, and it's supported not only by tireless work of many people who are assisting with that, but also like here on ground, but also all of the celestial activations and celestial events, and Earth is moving through that phase of intense waves that are coming through, and humanity is going through that, no, like it or not, you know. So and everyone who is awakened is influencing others as well, so there's a ripple effect too. But we literally are going through collective activation of DNA strands that were dormant for all this time, and that brings you back to your natural state of being. And your natural state of being is having all these abilities. Humans are the only ones outside of celestial realm that do not have these abilities, because we were blocked from these abilities. We were stuffed into like 3D and the physicality, and we were trained to only know the physicality, but now it's just kind of coming back home slowly.
And do you think there's kind of a joy in that journey of rediscovery of internal kind of power potential?
Oh my God, are you kidding? It's the best trip ever. Not only, what do you think what do you think motivated me to get up at 3 a.m. every freaking night, no matter what, for 5 years? Because that was the best sci-fi you can get, you know, and it's happening to you in real time, you know, no virtual reality stuff. You feel the whole thing and you see the whole thing, and it's the best experience ever. Oh my God.
It's incredible, because it's like I hear kind of about like lucid dreaming. So it's kind of
right,
it's kind of similar to that in a sense, isn't it? Like, no, well, but conceptually it is. Like if you were to explain it to somebody who maybe had never heard of this stuff before, and they're like, oh, what the hell is this? So lucid dreaming is essentially where you're in the dream and you're aware that you're dreaming, and you can control the dream because you know you're the dreamer.
Yeah, correct. But you experience to that. You in 4.5D, which means when you show up on a space station in your lucid dreaming state, they see a sleepwalker, you know. But when you show up in your meditative state, that's higher. It's 5D or maybe higher, you know, depending on where you plug in, and you're conscious. You can actually, like, it's literally like the beings see you as something that they can interact with, versus like the 4.5D, the sleeper. You brought yourself there, but you're not there enough to like, I don't know, to be an actual participant in interaction, let's say with a council or something like that. It's very interesting because it literally, like, I've been on space stations with various types of galactic councils, and there'll be like these sleepwalkers just kind of walking through the room, and they literally just like float through, like, whoa. And so they saw that, but they're not sitting down there and well, at least that's, you know, And so the group would be like, oh, look, they're humans like floating through. They're asleep. They're
So they're
sleeping.
not
So
fully
they're,
conscious in that
yeah.
entity.
In that reality, they're not fully conscious. Yes, that's accurate. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's so amazing. And I mean, okay, so when you first started having these abilities, was it scary? Like it must have been a point where you're going, what, you know what I mean? Was there any kind of fear that you ever had to work through, or any kind of, you know, stuff that you had to release, or were you just like straight in there and just like, yeah, bring it on? Like, do you know what I mean? Because surely some people do have to go through some sort of self, you know, release with regards to certain things if they are, because, you know, not everybody is ready to dive into that kind of, do you know what I mean? That unknown reality in a sense. So,
but I've released my fears through drug use. At the point when I when clean and sober doing the meditations, it was like similar kind of, you do get a little bit, because once the kundalini starts moving and you literally feel nauseated, you know, you have to really deal with your body at the beginning of this process, because the body has really strong resistance. You start doing that cobra breath, you pull the energy, you bring it up here, and as it's moving through here, a lot of people throw up, like you would feel really weird physically. But hey, you know, I no longer had any concerns about the body. I was just like, all right, so the body not feeling well, so what? Just gonna keep moving. And you just keep moving, and it's a short period of time that the body really tries to fight, because the body tries to fight for integrity of its boundaries. Like it doesn't want to let that soul out. It doesn't want to let you because it thinks, the ego thinks that it's gonna die, and it is gonna die, because once you not really die, but it's gonna be altered in a way, because when you merge into the state of non-being, then it literally is the death of the ego. But while we come back and we live here, the ego gets transformed, and it's terrified of that. And the ego and the body work very closely together. So the body is going to be giving you all kinds of like, oh my God, my knee hurts, or oh, I'm tired, or everything fell asleep, my legs fell asleep. I would literally sit and be aware that every part of my body had fallen asleep to the point that it hurts, and I would just still sit through it. And if you sit through it and it moves, you allow that energy to move out, you come back, body's perfectly fine.
Wow. So it's almost like it's some sort of subconscious energetic resistance to
definitely that is definitely present. Yes.
So it's almost, it's like resistance to the personal evolution.
It's resistance to what I just described. The body and ego are concerned that they're going to lose themselves, and you will, because the first time you come out, it literally feels like, whoa, I'm gone. Like complete dissolvement of personality.
But does that feel like kind of bliss? Is that a blissful experience? Can you describe what that experience is like?
For the most part, like a lot of people love the beginning of this process, because they experience that love, you know, that then whenever the true higher dimensional love experience, that, or when they say you come from love and all that like cliche stuff that new age people say, it's all true. You know, you are love, you do experience that. And then as you continue moving and you get into the void, there's nothing there, and they freak out because it's eerie. They say, oh my God, where did all the love go? I don't like that empty dark space where I don't exist. You know, but hey, you know, you just graduated kind of saying. So yeah, but the beginner phases, the experience of love is unbelievable. This is when people tap into what's called Christ consciousness. That's like you literally go through Christ consciousness phase. I have an article on my website, there on a few websites, but on like in 5D, but you can read it through my website. I wrote it 2015. It was my description of my experience of tapping into Christ consciousness. It was just I was just 1 year into this meditative practice. And so anyone started, that would be a good resource for them, because I described it in greatest detail of what happens, how you do it, and all that.
Wow. Wow, that's really, really cool. So then, okay, so you're saying, so the love level was the first level, and then the void is the second level. So what's
void is the last level.
The void's the last level.
The in between space is interacting with various dimensional beings and various levels of dimension, and you can expand horizontally and go into like let's say human incarnations from this day until, I don't know, Jesus's time, all the way there. Or you can go vertically and experience various different dimensions or different states of consciousness, let's just say. And after that, the void. So the void is just I think the void is when you graduated, you're like done. You're done with any location or dimension where soul takes any sort of form, whether physical or non-physical.
So basically you're going back to infinite possibility.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So what about then, you talked about different levels of consciousness or different dimensions. So how many different levels of consciousness have you experienced so far? Uncountable.
Infinite. I don't know. Are you expecting me to give you a number?
You can try.
Well, there's a specific number of cosmic races that I interact with, and I go into their habitat, so to speak. So these are different dimensional beings, so those are different dimensions, if you want to count it, but it's not counted in that way. It's the level of consciousness and level of development of the soul, and so you just kind of move through that. It's like if you want to imagine like a shaft or beam of light, and you can just move through that into higher and higher states of consciousness. So that does not have like that metric. We cannot really count that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I'm just trying to conceptualize it. So yeah, that's incredible. I mean, have you ever thought about writing a book about all this?
I think books are becoming obsolete very fast. So I talk about these things on my YouTube channel, and that's the level of creativity. I also am very busy with my practice, so I don't really have the space or the inspiration for writing it slow. Writing is slow and reading is slow, so I don't know, maybe one day. But I was kind of thinking about maybe having my videos transcribed and turn them into a book, but it's another project that I'm not really.
Have you ever read books like by Dean Radin, or any of these kind of extrasensory perception kind of guys? Have you ever read a book based on this type of stuff that has kind of captivated your imagination? You mentioned Dolores.
Yeah, except Dolores Cannon. I read like half of one Dolores Cannon's books. Out of her 20 books.
You read half of her book and then you got all these abilities, and you're like, see?
No, I read half of her book and said, whoa, I'm doing the same thing. But actually, when I read that half of her book, it was all mind-blowing to me. Like, her sessions were mind-blowing to me. I was like, whoa, how is all that information coming through? But her people were under hypnosis. So what I do is almost like hypnosis, but I am the one under hypnosis. So you can call it like a surrogate session in a way, because a surrogate hypnosis session where I merge with the client and get information for them. They don't have to go under hypnosis. So that kind of thing.
Oh, I see. Wow. So tell me a little bit about time fractalization then. That's something that you recently did a video on. So kind of explain that to listeners. What is time fractalization?
Well, it's kind of what we were just talking about, because reality is not non-local. It's not what we experience as human beings, that it's right here, right now in the physical, happening one moment after the next. Reality is constant expansion and in infinity. And so we actually can develop abilities to experience time in that way. And in that way, it will give us fractalization of time, or fractalization of reality, because you will be experiencing reality as many parallel realities simultaneously from this specific point of the specific vantage point.
So that's kind of like bilocating, but you're bilocating in time, through time.
Right, exactly. I think it's the same. I think it's the same thing, except it's just what we're just trying to make sense of it. So we call it time. It's actually because time, the purpose of time is to put experiences into some sort of reasonable, logical order, right? To put a box on top of multiple fractalizing reality. So humans, or this third density, lives within time constraints, but if you step out of that, you can really know that time can be manipulated, time can be changed. Any shamanic practitioner knows that you can influence time. Any normal human being knows that too, because sometimes time flies and sometimes it drags. And what does that depend on? That depends on the state of consciousness, the state of being, or whether you are inspired or not at that point. If you're bored,
it's relative to your emotional vantage point.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember reading somewhere years ago about the American Indians. They had one of the languages they had didn't it didn't objectify things. So basically events, like everything was an event. Like, so it wouldn't say the day, or it wouldn't say the object, it would say the time when this occurred. So basically the language didn't objectify in the way that the English language objectifies. And, with regards to kind of, the way that we conceptualize these quantum principles and all these different kind of concepts, do you think that language can limit us with regards to that?
Oh, absolutely. So we recover the movement into being telepathic, and language is most definitely a limiting aspect in human experience, because it labels everything, a certain way, and then it's linked directly to like the straight left brain analytical function, to like as a description to something. But when you're in telepathic space, then you experience everything's not like true essence, versus processing it through the brain, through the language. So when you move into telepathic space, the limitations are lifted. The limitations of language and description are lifted, really. So you start experiencing a whole different level of interaction and communication with the entire reality. Because like I said, everything has consciousness, so you can experience reality in that way. But human mind has the need, and that's that whole mind, ego, body group that we all carry as human beings. So the mind requires some sort of explanation, or it requires to make sense of things. That's the function of the brain, to make sense of things. And so that's why we have language, and that's why we have time also. And then I also experienced that people are able to, or that some people are connected horizontally to their incarnational flow. Let's just say they cannot move into, they do not experience human history through their incarnations. They experience the same era over and over and over through their incarnations. So you can say they're incarnating horizontally, or they're pulling into this present moment. They're pulling incarnational imprints from the same era over and over, which is the same timeline pretty much, or at least like just the flow of time that I would categorize as horizontal flow of time.
Wow, that's amazing. So some people don't have the ability then to ascend to the higher levels of consciousness then. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this particular present being is pulling into their experience karmic imprints, or the time imprints from parallel realities that are expanding horizontally, not the ones that are throughout the flow of history. It has nothing to do with their ability to ascend or whatever, because we're just talking human level here, or human experience of time.
Okay, okay, okay. So say if somebody came to you that had that, you know, predicament, let's say, you would still be
Yeah.
able to work with them and to...
Yeah, I learned that through the session. Yeah, and it's not really a predicament. It's just the person is in this lifetime. But we call it working out karma. I don't really believe much into working out karma or whatever, but they are pulling their abilities and skills and imprints and information from the era that is, for whatever reason, at this point, most beneficial for them, and that's horizontal, just one era. You know, majority of people are pulling in imprints from you know, ancient times and medieval times, and then the Renaissance era, and then to the present moment, and they have all of that in, like, being pulled into the present moment and influenced by them. But for her, it was just that era at this particular moment of time. But because we also shift all the time, and things change, and we shift between timelines all the time as well. So it could be that previously or in the future, she's gonna have a different set of influences from different set of incarnational group, let's just say.
So it's essentially something that she has to clear before she can kind of expand that.
Maybe clear if those are negative imprints, but if they're positive imprints and they are imprints that are assisting her in the present moment, then no, it will do the opposite. We'll milk that. We'll pull, you know, she said, oh my God, I'm all of these people in this incarnation, because I gave her all of the descriptions of the people
I remember reading
that era.
that. Yeah. That, you put that as a post or something, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that. I remember reading about that. Yeah, that was fascinating. So she was basically living different lives in the same time period, but she was different people.
Yeah.
In the same time period.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating.
I have not heard of this. This is why it was really exciting for me, because most incarnational flows, I guess maybe that's linked to the way human brain processes stuff, is most incarnational flows are like in a historical way. You know, they might come in and scrambled, like, you know, recent time first, and then the older year, like the previous eras earlier, but they are usually kind of in chronological, more or less, like in the historical order, like what we know as far as history, you know, or if a person started incarnating in ancient times and then went through all of these different eras until the present moment. Wow. So that's what usually comes up in like past life readings.
Okay, so tell us then, where can people find out more about you then? If they want to learn more about
my website, isabellagreene.com. It's just my name, very standard, GREENE.com. And yeah, I do express all this on my YouTube channel, so join me there. I am very active on Facebook. I have my page that's linked to my practice on Facebook, and also there's still a few openings left for friend and me, which if I friend everyone right now, then I'm gonna be up to capacity, but I'm kind of dragging my feet on that. So there's just a few openings still on personal profile too. So that's it. That's my exposure.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Well, look, Isabella, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to have another conversation with you at some point about this stuff. There's so many different things to talk about, you know, quantum entanglement, like, I mean, black holes. I mean, there's just the curvature of space-time. There's so many different concepts, you know, to talk about. So I'm really looking forward to having another conversation with you soon. So
likewise, thank you very much, Nigel.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for coming on the show today. Okay, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Journey Within. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.